Hey there, and welcome back to the show. Before we dive into today's episode, just a quick reminder that you can find the full transcript and additional notes over on our Substack. As always, for the most immersive experience, we recommend listening with your headphones. Today we're exploring the stories we tell ourselves to survive Monday morning. So, let's get started. The alarm does not ask permission. It arrives like a small violence, a shard of sound that splits the dark. And in that first bleary interval, before our hand finds the snooze button, before our body remembers its obligations, something remarkable happens. Our mind begins to speak. It tells a story about the day ahead. Not the real day, but a manageable version of it. A day where the inbox will be tamed, the meeting will end on time, the unfinished project will finally give way to sustained attention. This story takes shape so quickly, so automatically, that we barely notice we are making it up. We just roll over, sigh, and start the slow process of becoming who we promised ourselves we would be. But what are we really doing in those first moments of waking, and what does it cost us to keep doing it, day after day, year after year? We have read somewhere, though the source has dissolved into the general fog of memory, that the average person tells themselves somewhere between 50 and 70 small stories before noon. Not the elaborate tales of therapy or memoir, the small, fast fictions that grease the joints of ordinary life. I'll just check email for 5 minutes. This coffee will be enough. If I can make it to lunch, the afternoon will be easier. Each of these statements holds a piece of possibility and a seed of self-deception. The email will eat an hour. The coffee will not be enough. The afternoon will bring its own weather, indifferent to the bargains we struck with the morning. We cannot live without these fictions. This is not a failure of character. It is a condition of being conscious. Our brain is not a camera. It is a storyteller. It takes the messy, incomplete data of sensation and memory and weaves them into a narrative that feels solid, that lets us act, that makes the next moment thinkable. The question is not whether we tell ourselves stories. The question is whether we know we are doing it, and whether we can hold the story lightly enough to change it when it stops serving us. Here is what we are circling toward. The difference between a helpful fiction and a lie we have come to believe is not a difference in kind. It is a difference in awareness. The helpful fiction knows itself to be a fiction. It wears its made-up nature lightly. We can set it aside when the moment calls for something truer. But the lie we have begun to believe, that is a story that has forgotten its origins. It has moved from the front of our mind to the foundation. And foundations, as we know, are not easily dug up. Consider the story we tell about work. Most of us, if pressed, would admit that our jobs contain real absurdity. The performative urgency, the meetings that could have been emails, the strategic plans that no one will remember in 6 months. And yet we keep telling ourselves that what we do matters, that the spreadsheet will be noticed, that the presentation will shift something in the world. This is not necessarily false, but it is necessarily incomplete. The full truth that we spend most of our waking hours inside systems we did not design, chasing goals we did not choose, surrounded by people we would not necessarily pick as friends, that truth is hard to hold for very long without something cracking. The psychologist James Hollis, who writes from the Jungian tradition, says that the unexamined life may still be worth living, but it is not worth examining. A clever line, also a defensive one, because the implication is that looking too closely might reveal something we cannot unsee. And this is precisely the risk we want to name. Not that our small daily self-deceptions are sick or wrong. Not that we should strip them all away and face the raw, indifferent universe with stiff upper lips. But that we should at least know which rooms we have furnished ourselves and which one came with the house. Let me tell you about a friend. Call her M. She spent 7 years in a doctoral program she knew, by the second year, was wrong for her. Not wrong in the sense of forward or demanding. Wrong in the sense that the questions the field asked no longer felt alive to her. She stayed because she had told herself a story about finishing, about what it would mean to quit, about the look on her father's face when she explained that she had changed her mind. These were not lies exactly. The look on her father's face would have been real. The feeling of failure would have been real. But the stories she told herself about those consequences, that they would be unbearable, that they would define her forever, that she would rather be miserable for 7 years than ashamed for 7 months. That story was a cage she had built around a door that was never locked. She finished the degree. She does not use it. And when I asked her, over wine one evening, whether she regretted the time, she said something I have not stopped thinking about. "I don't regret the time," she said. "I regret the story I told myself about what the time meant. I thought I was being strong. I was just being obedient to a story I never chose." This is the cruelty of the small deception. It does not announce itself as a cage. It announces itself as common sense, as maturity, as the thing any reasonable person would do. And because it wears the face of reason, we do not question it. We just keep going, year after year, living inside a story that began as a survival trick and ended as a prison. The psychoanalyst D.W. Winnicott came up with the idea of the false self, a compliant, socially smooth version of ourselves that protects our real self from the wounds of the world. Winnicott saw this as a normal response to early life. The baby who cannot reliably expect comfort from the mother learns to present a self that gets the desired response. Smile when smiled at. Stay still when the atmosphere is tense. A performance of okayness that slowly becomes indistinguishable from the performer. But Winnicott was writing about the nursery, not the office. About mothers and infants, not employees and alarm clocks. And yet we keep wondering whether the small deceptions of Monday morning are not just practical coping tools, but rehearsals of a much older pattern. The false self does not retire when we grow up. It just changes costumes. On Monday morning, the false self tells our true self, "You can do this. You have done this before. The day will not break you." And our true self, tired from years of such negotiations, nods and reaches for the coffee. Simone Weil wrote that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. She meant attention to other people, to suffering, to the divine. But what about attention to the self? What about the kind of attention that notices the gap between the story being told and the life being lived? That kind of attention is also rare, also generous, also, I suspect, unbearable in large doses. We cannot live without fictions. Let me be very clear about this. I am not arguing for some kind of radical honesty that would leave us unable to function. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrote about bad faith, the refusal to admit our own freedom, the pretending that we are just objects being pushed around by fate rather than people who can choose. The waiter who acts so much like a waiter that he becomes the role. The woman on a date who treats her hand like a thing rather than part of her living body. These are small betrayals of possibility, but they are not small in their effects. Each act of bad faith is a brick in the wall of a life not fully lived. I do not want to say that every Monday morning negotiation with the alarm clock is an act of bad faith. That would be absurd and cruel and ignorant of the real constraints that shape most lives. We have bills. We have children. We have a mortgage or rent or a loan we cannot walk away from. These are not fictions. They are the real architecture of obligation. But within that architecture, there is still room for choice. Not the heroic movie-style choice of quitting our job and moving to a cabin in the woods. The smaller, more ordinary choice of noticing the story we are telling and asking whether it might be told differently. What would it mean to face Monday morning without the usual fictions? Not without hope, exactly, but without the automatic stories that shield us from the strangeness of what we are doing. The commute, the cubicle, the spreadsheets and the small talk and the lights that hum a frequency just below what we can hear. What if we refuse to tell ourselves that this is meaningful, or necessary, or just temporary? What if we simply admitted that this is what we are doing, for reasons that are partly chosen and partly handed to us, and that the day will pass regardless of the story we attach to it? This is not giving up on meaning. It is something closer to clearing the air. Because the cage, I have come to believe, is not the situation itself. The cage is the story that makes the situation feel permanent. This is just how things are. Everyone feels this way. It will get better when... The when part is especially tricky. It puts fulfillment in a future that never arrives, a horizon that moves back as we move forward. The philosopher Emile Cioran, who wrote beautifully about despair, said that we do not really live. We promise ourselves that we will live in a future that never comes. We have not lived, he wrote. We have only promised ourselves that we would live on the morrow, the tomorrow of Monday, the tomorrow of the promotion, the tomorrow of the retirement that will finally free us to be who we are. And the present moment, the only moment that actually exists, becomes just a hallway to somewhere else. I am aware, even as I write this, that I am circling a paradox. The stories that help us survive Monday morning are the same stories that stop us from asking whether Monday morning needs surviving. They are painkiller and trap, both at once. And the difference between a helpful fiction and a lie we have come to believe turns out to be less about what the story says and more about how we relate to it. The helpful fiction is the one we can put down when the emergency passes. The lie we have come to believe is the one we have forgotten we are even holding. So maybe the practice is not getting rid of all fictions. Maybe it is cultivating a certain kind of attention, a pause. Somewhere between the alarm and the shower, we ask ourselves, what am I telling myself right now? And is it helping me live, or is it just helping me get through? Because getting through and living are not the same thing. Getting through is what prisoners do. Living requires at least the possibility of movement. I think of the poet Mary Oliver, who spent her life paying attention to ordinary things with an intensity that made them glow. She did not need to tell herself stories about the value of a morning walk or the meaning of a grasshopper. She just paid attention, and the attention itself made meaning. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? She asked, not as a challenge, as an invitation. And the question lands differently when we realize she was asking it of herself. Probably on a Tuesday, probably after a night of poor sleep and a morning of ordinary chores. The question does not need an answer. It just needs us to keep asking it, to refuse to let the small deceptions harden into a biography we never agreed to write. The alarm will ring again tomorrow. This is not speculation. It is the most reliable fact we have. And when it rings, I will tell myself something. I will tell myself that the day is manageable, that the work matters, that the coffee will be good enough. Some of this will be true. Some of it will be a story I inherited from a younger version of myself, who needed that story to survive a different morning, a different year, a different set of circumstances that no longer exist. The question, and I realize I am only now arriving at the question itself, is whether I can tell the story without forgetting that it is a story. Whether I can hold the narrative lightly, like a coat that fits well enough but is not my skin. Whether I can survive Monday morning without building a cage from the very words that helped me stand up. I do not know the answer. Maybe this is the wrong question entirely, but I cannot shake the feeling that the answer matters less than the asking. That the attention itself, the brief, unflinching pause before the story begins, is the only freedom we really have. So, here is what I will try tomorrow. When the alarm splits the dark, I will not reach immediately for the familiar story. I will lie still for a moment. I will feel the weight of my body against the mattress. I will listen to the silence before the mind begins its work. And then, when the story comes as it will, as it must, I will say to myself, as clearly as I can, this is a story. It is not the only story, and I am the one telling it. Then I will get up, make the coffee, begin again, and perhaps that is enough.